What was the moment you realized that you shouldn't have showed up to a date?
When at the party I met her at and her boyfriend said, "Go ahead, take her. I'm sick of her poo."
Lol. I was at a party and a girl I used to date was there with a friend of mine that is also her new boyfriend. They argued a lot, including at the party. He shouts, "Joe, do you want her back?" She does my effing head in, lol.
I went on a date a few months after me and my college GF had broken up. I had matched with this girl off of Tinder and we messaged a bit, but she was relentless about wanting to know more about my ex and how I felt after the breakup. I looked past this and met her for dinner a couple nights later. I walked in the restaurant and my ex is sitting at the table under that girl's name. I turned around to walk out and got a Tinder notification from the girl I had agreed to meet. "You'll never be able to get away from me. Should have stayed home that night, and steer clear of blind dates."
So how did you feel about leaving the date early? I'm not your ex BTW.
His girlfriend showed up as we were arm in arm chugging shots.
When he said he was actually from an entirely different state, looked completely different from his photos and then asked if he could borrow $400 for methadone before we even ordered. I left immediately. Been stalking me for over 10 years. Fun times.
I went to his house to play Magic after meeting him at my LGS a couple times, excused myself to pee, and as I was peeing, he stood outside of the bathroom door and did an awful impression of the Joker laugh while saying he's been waiting for someone like me and other extremely creepy phrases about how I am perfect for him. The post-peeing bathroom exit was so absolutely awkward, riddled with me saying several different versions of "Oh wow, that was a great Joker impression haha," and him continuing to speak like the Joker. It was the longest, most tense, fearful walk down the stairs. I left shortly after that. It still tortures me.
I didn't show up for this date, but was always super proud I trusted my intuition. Had a date scheduled with a guy at a nice place downtown that I had agreed to. Right before the date he leaves me a message, "We're going to a different place." I look it up, and it's a dive bar out in the middle of nowhere. Like in a field. Alarm bells started going off. I actually really liked the guy and went back and forth with myself before I call the guy back and get his voicemail. So I leave a message apologizing profusely, but I need to reschedule the date. And I'd like to pick the place this time. Alarm bells are still going off and I end up letting his return call go to voicemail. I'm glad I do because I had to listen to it twice to believe it. This grown man proceeds to scream at me, calling me every name in the book. Calling me a bitch and stupid W. Telling me how I missed out on the best date with best guy of my life. And then proceeds to tell me how he would have made me squirt all over that very night, nauseated face. I hadn't even been remotely sexual with him, so the squirting comment came completely out of left field. That was the most happy I'd been. I went with my gut and skipped out on a first date.
When he didn't let me look at a menu, ordered for me a water and a kid's chicken tender meal. I'm 24, ate half my meal, and was talking so much about himself he spit pieces of chicken on me. Had a great time at dinner, and went for a walk through a park afterwards. We're walking along and talking and she mentions to me that she is still, technically, engaged to a guy, but she was only marrying him because he had gotten her pregnant. But she had had a miscarriage a few days ago, had not told him yet, and now that there was no baby and she had met me, she was going to tell him and break up with him. There was no second date.
When she told me she wanted to dine and dash, pretty much as soon as we ordered drinks.
When the guy that showed up was easily 30 years older than what he looked like in the picture he had sent me.
This happened to me once, except it was with a house cleaner. I hired him cause he asked me to online. I thought he was 50. He came out of the car hobbling and couldn't carry his cleaning stuff up my stairs. His daughter called and he had her on speaker. She was screaming, saying an 80-yo man shouldn't be cleaning people's houses. He did such a horrible job cleaning my house. He also left the gas stove running, and if I hadn't noticed the smell, we probably would have blown up. Lol, I felt so bad I panicked, tipped him $30.
When she told me she recently celebrated 100 days of being sober and then suggested we buy some Coke. She told me not to worry about it because she had done it a few times since celebrating those 100 days.
Meet a girl at a bar and things clicked well. Went on a date a few nights later and she shows up with her sister. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Figured she was being safe, possibly since we just met. But this happened 2 more times. I finally said, "Can we go out without your sister?" and she seemed insulted at the idea. Found out months later she had no sister, it was just her friend and they did everything together. Was truly strange. Edit. So to clarify, because some of the comments are asking about a threesome. I honestly thought it was her sister at the time, so the thought of something like that never crossed my mind, until after I found out the truth. Also the limited intimacy we had, think kissing and so forth. Her sister would kind of stare off into the distance and didn't seem interested at all. The whole situation was strange and confusing. But now that I'm married with kids, it's funny to think back about it and laugh.
About 15 years ago I was flying kites at Newport Beach with my wife, and there was a guy there strolling the beach holding hands with twins. And he was wearing a t-shirt with stick figure drawings of a guy and two girls, with the caption, "I heart twins." Sometimes I think about them and wonder if they're still together.
10 minutes in and he was checking out the two women at the table next to us. Like hardcore staring, peeking around the booth wall until they looked at him uncomfortably. Lol.
What the hell is wrong with some people? LMAO.
When he read me poetry he wrote about his ex and showed me his Viagra stash. Edit for those who feel for those with Ed. Dear guys with Ed. I love you and there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. This was not at that place, that's why it was weird. We had just met maybe 30 minutes before. It just got brought up as like a check this out kind of thing, skeptical smiley face.
What's the big deal? Nothing turns me on more than a guy still hung up on his ex and who can't get it up.
When he went on a long and obnoxious rant about how my job at the time, assistant welder, was stupid and a waste of time, and that I should become a dental hygienist, a job I have no interest in, because, at least it has a future. The whole date itself was awful. But it was at that point I realized, we were not a match, to say the least, face with rolling eyes.
When he walked into the cafe we were meeting it with a 4L jug of water, plopped it on the counter, and told the barista to use his special filtered water for the tea he was ordering. Turned out he sells these water purification machines that optimize the pH. Which he insisted was not a pyramid scheme. It definitely was. After enduring his awful sales pitch, he also told me he used to be a dealer and that he turned to selling water because he's addicted to selling. He also told me how he had extremely old-fashioned values, his words, and that he is a very controlling person and can't help it. He said he hates when people waste his time and is looking for a wife. Every time I tried talking about anything, he would cut me off and start talking about himself. He offered me a ride home at the end. I politely declined and ran the second I was no longer in line of sight.
He said, "You're not pretty enough for me, but maybe you're freaky to make up for it." Grimace.
Within 5 minutes of meeting at the restaurant she told me she, 1. had been engaged twice, we were both 23 at the time, and 2. that she was in a lot of debt. Like, thanks for telling me I guess, but the date only got worse from there.
When he picked me up and said he had a stop to make first. He met his crack dealer behind a gas station.
Hey, you want anything while we're here? I think I'm going to order the crack.
He did offer me some. He smoked it in the car while driving with his knees and shouting into his cell phone at his ex-girlfriend that of course he wasn't using.
That time when I walked into the restaurant where I was meeting that doctor I met online, and he was there wearing a white lab coat, to dinner, our first and last date.
Yes, hello, it is I, medical doctor date guy. You can tell by the doctor coat I am wearing.
She pulled out her iPad and starts trying to sell me insurance.
Arrives at date. Date pulls out paperwork. Hello. We've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty.
When she told me she believed she was the reincarnation of 17th century pirate, Anne Bonny, Link.
There's no proof Bonnie is even dead. She just disappeared 300 years ago.
She happily talked about herself but never showed the slightest interest in me. Yet she was very excited when I asked her out. A few days later my friend told me she had been talking poo about me.
When he told me he had been married and divorced, a sniper, and a trucking company owner. Not a single thing was true. Which was good. Bad. I ran.
When she tried to get me in a fight with a stranger. I think she knew the guy. Long story, but I think what she did was an attempt to get him to assault me. She was nuts.
Dude, what? Was this supposed to be a test if you're man enough, or something?
When he asked me out and I said yes, he then asked if I'd like to go to dinner and what kind of food I liked. I said anything but sushi. He took me to a sushi place. Said he thought he'd be able to change my mind.
Oh God. Personally love sushi, but you don't try to convince someone about sushi on the first date.
My mum set me up with a nice boy. I found out 30 minutes into the date he was not long out of prison for armed robbery, assault with a dangerous weapon and housebreaking. Turns out she didn't know him that well at all.
My mom gave a guy my email because he had cute eyes. He ended up telling me his occupation had a high divorce rate. And his uncle ate a piece of bark a kid gave him.
He took me on a surprise date. To watch him skateboard. Yay. Watched him eat poo for 2 hours, then he pouted dropping me off. BC he didn't nail the move.
See, that's worse because that had the potential to be fun. Like teach you a few easy moves and make it a fun thing. I mean, like guiding someone as they try to skate the first few feet is a perfect opportunity to introduce physical closeness without being weird, and it could be a fun memory. Instead he made it all about him. Such a shame.
She brought her ex-boyfriend to see if he approved. After he said that, they asked for a three-way. This was not ever mentioned before the date. I was under the impression we were meeting one-on-one.
I don't think that's an ex-boyfriend.
I picked her up and she said, let's hurry up and go. My husband will be back soon. Don't worry, we're getting divorced, but he won't want to see me on a date.
That's a big press X to doubt moment. Edit, over 7K upvotes. People really liked this one, lol.
When he took my sandals off in a public restaurant and sniffed them under the table, I went to the bathroom and waited for a chance to leave.
I'm not sure what was the exact moment I realized I shouldn't have showed up, but I think it was at some point during the first 10 minutes. She showed up 30 minutes late and her apology was, "Sorry I'm late, but I'm always late." Then she spent the first 15 minutes talking about her ex who she just broke up with 3 days ago. During the entire date, she asked 0 questions about me and only talked about herself and her problems. Gossiped about her friends, who I didn't even know at all. Spent 20 minutes showing me photos and videos of her cat. I usually like cats, but I was really annoyed at that point. Complained about the ice in her soda. And spent the last 10 minutes of the date talking about how much she needs to pee but refused to use the public restroom. I was so glad when that date was over.
While perusing the menu, he asked what I was going to get. I said, I'm thinking about, and he cut me off to say, they don't have here. I chuckled and continued, so I think I'll have the chicken. He responded seriously with a raised voice, they don't have chicken here either, and shook his head like I was annoying. I just stared at him for a minute. Edit. Fixed perusing.
He about to not have our second date. What a tool.
I waited on the park bench next to a girl for about 30 minutes after the agreed upon time. Turns out I was sitting next to my date the entire time. I just didn't recognize her because she was at least 200 pounds bigger than any of her pictures with no similarities. Turns out her much more attractive friend was trying to help her out by making a Tinder profile, using her own pictures, doing the matching and flirting, and then letting her less attractive friend actually do the meetings. Dating is effing nuts.
He said he didn't like hair in a bun or choker necklaces. I happened to have my hair in a bun and was wearing a choker at the time.
My brother once had a date and the woman spent the first 15 minutes talking about how unattractive bald guys are. My brother is bald. The worst part is they met over Tinder. He is bald on all of his Tinder pics. There wasn't one old pic of him with hair on his profile.
When she responded to, hi, on Tinder with something like, hey cutie, want to come to my parents' house? Not really a date, honestly, but a good story. We chatted for a bit, and according to her she wasn't looking for anything serious, but she wanted me to pick her up, take her out to dinner, and maybe have sex afterwards. Very transactional, which kinda stung, but whatever, she was hot. I looked up the address she gave me and was surprised to find a neighborhood I did work in, and that the house was one I knew was for sale. Specifically, the owner died and it was being gutted to be resold by his kids. At this point 100% convinced this was a scam, but somewhat curious, I decided to drive by and see if anyone was there, texting her I was coming, but in a different type of car. Really expensive neighborhood, on a sea cliff, felt like an adventure. Took my work truck. Drove by and some huge dude comes out of the house, stares at my truck, and goes back in. Could see other people inside. No pet out of there super fast. Pretty convinced it was a phishing scam to mug me, or a prank. Didn't feel like finding out.
This is a common tactic to jump and rob people. It's been in the news, and I've seen personal stories from Tinder and the likes of first-hand accounts. If a cute girl instantly wants you to come over and F without knowing anything about you or talking to you, like within the first couple messages, there's a chance you'll get robbed at the very least.
When I waited at the restaurant longer than I like to admit. I called him asking if he was on his way and he said yes. When he finally showed up, he told me he had just gotten to the gym when I called. It was just a bad night.
We may have almost dated the same guy. He confirmed we were still meeting at the restaurant, an hour ahead of time. I arrive at 7 p.m., the time we were supposed to meet. Only to then see he'd sent me a text 4 minutes earlier that he had changed his mind and was going to the gym instead. He wanted to reschedule. I told him, "Are you kidding me? I just wasted 30 minutes of my time driving back and forth to that restaurant. But I told you I changed my mind. With only 4 minutes notice. I was already almost there. Yeah, no, you bitches always complain there are no good men out there. But then you don't even give a good man a chance. Good men don't stand women up with only 4 minutes notice or call them bitches." Then I blocked him. I dated this girl who was a friend of a friend. She used to come into the pub I worked at for $10 steak night with her mum and a guy who we weren't sure if was her boyfriend or brother. Turned out it was her brother, but they were weirdly close. Anyway, we went on a date. She seemed quite uncomfortable the whole time. Didn't make much conversation, just obviously wasn't into it, so I dropped her home, and she asked me if I wanted to come in. Against my better judgment I did. They had 2 couches in the living room. I sat on one awkwardly, while she laid on the other couch and spooned with her brother. At this point I realized I should not have shown up. Every time she left the pub from then on in her and her brother left holding hands.
Do you know if they were actually brother-sister or some F-buddy?
Definitely brother and sister. Mutual friend confirmed it.
I met this guy on Tinder. He seemed really cool. We started texting for a month or so and later planned to meet at this tavern. It was hard trying to find him because the place was packed. When I do see him, I guess he's drunk. Lol, but he didn't seem like completely out of it, he was functional. I tried to ask him questions and get to know him in this sort of loud and busy space, and the whole time, even though he's inches away from my face, he can't hear what I'm asking or saying. Mind you, he invited me to this place. I'd never gone here before. This was supposed to be our first date. He proceeds to buy me a beer and kept slapping me on my backside, quite forcefully to be honest. This is my first time meeting him. We get a beer and he asks me, "Do you want a drink?" I tell him he just bought me one. He asks this question annoyingly over and over again as if he forgot he asks. This goes on for at least an hour. All the while I'm trying to kick it with him. Play some outdoor bar games and such. And he's asking, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "I'm on a date with you, lol." He asks me this question over and over as well. I don't get how anyone is that incoherent. He wasn't that drunk, he couldn't have been. Even if he was, when we texted he seemed fairly intelligible and kind. But the whole night he probably only asked me 2 to 3 questions, the same ones, over and over, and kept slapping me on my backside. There was a point we were going to congregate with his friends and I sort of lost him in the crowd and left. Very rude and weird. He had the nerve to call me, and asked where I went. I told him I went home. He said he wanted to get to know me, and I was like, yeah, maybe another time. Like, dude, you had the whole night to try. He had no intent to make a real effort. I blocked the F out of him.
You went on a date with an NPC.
A friend told me she once went on a date with a guy who spoke only about the health insurance benefits at his work.
I know I'm getting older when I think to myself, wonder what kind of benefits this fella had to be bragging about in public?
When he told me he was drinking across town in another bar doing shots and would be where I was ASAP. He was driving himself.
I showed up and her best friend was there that I hadn't been warned was coming with us. Then her brother showed up. Then her dad showed up. Then her mum and her 3 cousins aged 3 to 5 showed up. That was the point. I excused myself to bathroom. Thankfully this is one of those places where the employees will sneak you out if you're having a bad date and need an out, and apparently I'm the first guy they snuck out at that point.
This is the kind of car crash date that I really want even more details on.
I wish I had more to give you. She told me she was kind of new to dating but would be fine meeting me in a public place. I was given no warning any of these other people were coming, and when they arrived the others each acted as though they were expected. I bailed the moment I could.
When I watched her crash into a parked car and not leave a note. Actions speak louder than words. When she asked if we could stop at her mom's house first so she could grab something, then after 10 minutes of waiting in the car she came running out of the door carrying a baby and a woman was chasing her screaming. She jumped in the car and started yelling, "Drive, drive, drive." I turned the car off and got out.
When I went on this date with this dude, and he had zero interests. When I tell you zero, I mean it. He didn't watch movies, series, did not listen to music, did not watch TV, didn't have any hobbies, did not have any siblings, any friends, any work, just university studies. He didn't like to cook or clean or even go on walks. It was the most awkward date I have ever been with someone. Edit. Thanks for the comments and the upvotes. Some more context about this guy. He was studying economics, he lived alone and was an unemployed student. We met on Tinder, and both his pictures and our conversation there seems normal. I thought he was just shy. But no, he was the most boring person I have ever met in my life.
I am a human with human interests like adding information into myself and completing courses in the education system.
I told her I had been in the military. She told me she had been engaged to 3 different guys in the military.
Well, LLP. She definitely had a type.
A guy walked into the bar and she stared at him for a few seconds and said, "He has an 8-inch cock." I can't remember his name though.
That almost sounds like a code phrase. Did she try to pass you state secrets of some sort?
At the end of the date she told me that she wanted to be fed by her dog so bad but the dog wasn't interested.
Damn dude, imagine getting Mon's best friend zoned.
He told me to meet him at a bar, which turned out to be a hole in the wall in a strip mall, literally just a bar, no food, just booze. We were supposed to be having dinner. I had put in some effort with a cute outfit, nice makeup, etc. He showed up in ratty old jeans and a paint-splattered hoodie. That was the moment that made me think, oh, this is gonna be bad, but he'd already caught me, so we sat down and the bartender immediately put a pint glass vodka tonic in front of him before even asking what I wanted. Clearly he was a regular. We tried to make small talk but he was just so effing weird. He was cutting me off mid-sentence with random nonsense, buddy punching me on the arm, and kept hurrying me to finish my drink so I could keep up with him. He was slamming these pints of vodka tonic, one after the other, and the bartender kept coming. I finished my 1 light beer, paid for my drink, which offended him deeply, and got up to leave. He chugged his last drink, threw a $100 bill on the bar, and followed me into the parking lot. I tried to get away politely and he interrupted with, "Come back to my place, IF like a freight train." I stumbled over my, "no thank you," and before I'd finished the sentence he got into his car, started the engine, and screeched out of the parking lot, almost getting it onto 2 wheels on the turn. There were some interesting characters back in the early days of online dating. 2004 was like the Wild West.
As a woman, I'm not sure that I want to be fed like a freight train, or by a drunk one at that.
Oh, I have one. I was 18. A girl sent me a PM on MSN saying she got my details from my mate and wanted to go in a date with me. I asked my mate and he said she was hot, so after talking a bit I agreed to a date. I had seen a photo and she was attractive. I turned up to the cafe for the date and was approached by some girl I'd never seen with a baby. She then told me she was the girl, looked nothing like her photo. She explained she thought I'd never go for someone who looked like her. She was right. Then she left her baby with me while she went to the toilet quickly. Alarm bells started to ring after 15 minutes. I asked a waitress to check on her. To my surprise, the waitress came back and said no one was in there. I looked around the cafe and she was gone. I hadn't noticed her leaving. I didn't have any of her contact details and smartphones were not a thing, so I didn't have internet access. I phoned my mate and got him to attempt to contact her on MSN. After telling him what happened, he was surprised and had no idea. Apparently he also thought her pictures were the real her. Another 20 minutes went and I was scared, so I asked the waitress for help. Thankfully she was able to help and called the police. They showed up and I explained what happened. I didn't know anything about this girl, so I couldn't really help them. They said if she contacted me to get her to contact them. I left and walked towards my car. I went past another cafe about 6 shops down and there she was with a different guy. I went back to the police and got him to take her baby in while I watched through the window outside and waved when she looked up. Turns out I was the babysitter for her real date.
Wow, I think you win.
I didn't at the time, lol. I was incredibly worried and freaking the hell out.
I went on a date with a guy on Tinder. He was a co-worker of one of my friends, so I figured he'd be alright. First date was decent enough, so we went on a second. This date was also going well until I mentioned his pentagram necklace, asking if he just liked the design or if he was pagan. He either did not wear this necklace to the first date or it had been under his shirt. He replied pagan, and I said how I found the pagan religion to be very interesting and was hoping to hear more about it. Oh boy, I wish I didn't. He had been fairly shy up until that point. He did a complete 180 and started going on, very loudly in this fairly nice restaurant, about how his mother could physically heal people just with touch, and about how his friend was in the army and got shot in the leg but didn't feel any pain from it because my date had linked minds with him from across the world and took all the pain for him instead. I managed to get through the date, and when I got home, I messaged to say it wasn't working out, that I didn't feel any spark after 2 dates, and wished him well. He immediately blocked me. I then messaged my friend, who was his coworker, asking if the pagan talk was normal for him. Friend calls me to cry from laughter over the phone about how he and all the other coworkers knew he was crazy but also knew he was harmless, so wanted to see how I'd react to him. Bit cruel on my friend's part to not warn me, especially since he knew I was going on these dates, but I definitely wasn't going on a third regardless. Edit. Wow, this exploded. Couple of things to clear up. My friend did not set up the dates. I mentioned to him that I had gone on the first date with the guy and he had told me he worked at the same place as my friend. My friend and I are nowhere near as close as we used to be. We are still in the same group of friends, but we don't really talk to each other outside of that. He is also gay, so setting him up with a crazy girl definitely won't work, and since we aren't as close anymore, I think doing something like that would make him drop me as a friend and force the group to pick sides, which I don't want happening. As for all the people bringing up how this could have been dangerous, I completely agree with you. I made sure to meet with him only in public places both times I saw him. We were never alone at any point during either dates. I have dealt with sexual assaults, abuse in my life, and both of those jerks were boyfriends rather than strangers. Obviously strangers can do those things as well, but this was just my experiences. Thanks for the upvotes, and I hope you all had a good laugh.
So what we're all wanting to know now is, how are you going to get your friend back for this?
Time she was hiding the fact she had a baby. Didn't say anything about that when we were texting each other days prior. But that wasn't the deal breaker. The deal breaker was the fact she had a baby and was alcoholic that couldn't keep herself under control, and also mentioned that her ex, currently in jail at the time, didn't really break up. I figured she was trying to keep me around as a rebound.
When she didn't look anything like her pictures on her social media, dating profiles. I'm not a very attractive person myself, so I do understand that it's difficult to get dates, but don't lie to me and expect me to be okay with it. Took a weird interest in me working in childcare. Kept bringing up kids and toddlers. Eventually he made it clear he wanted a lot of kids and wanted me at home taking care of them. Which, whatever, I like the idea of being a housewife. Just the way he came across was bad and misogynistic. Told me at one point he's not touching the kids till they're out of diapers. That's my job. At that point I knew I had made a mistake. Problem was he was also my ride since a friend dropped me off. Had to go home with him. It was a virtual date during the height of the pandemic, and she spent the entire time with a filter of some sort. Similar to the dog filter in Snapchat but minus the ears. This was after she was an hour late because she was napping and forgot.
She brought her 3 kids with her to a date, where she specifically requested Denny's. Asked if it was okay if they eat with us. I said, sure, as long as I'm not paying. Then began to berate me in that polite rudeness about how there's no more real men in the world. Nope, head the F out of there.
The moment she called me by her dad's name. Twice.
One of my first attempts at online dating many years ago. The girl wasn't very bright, but she was really nice and absolutely beautiful judging by the pictures she'd sent me. As a little background, she told me she was 5'2" and worked out, and had an average to slim body. I didn't think anything of her telling me her height because she asked me mine, and that's not always easily deduced from photos. But her telling me that she worked out and had an average, slim body was odd because that was clear from the photos. After a couple weeks, we set a time and place to meet. I arrived at a park near a gazebo she said she would be at. I looked through my windshield, but all I saw was this really tall, obese woman wearing pajamas standing inside. She was easily 6 feet 4 inches or 6 feet 5 inches, certainly taller than I was. Thought maybe she was late, because clearly there was no 5 feet 2 inches petite female in sight, so I call her. Then I see the woman's flip phone light up and play a song I didn't recognize, and she answered. It was her. She said, "I see you," immediately hung up and started walking towards my car. That was the moment I knew I'd wasted an hour of my time driving out to meet a stranger. I hit the lock before she could open door and rolled down the window with a, "Do I know you?" She said something along the lines of, "Yeah, I'm a bit taller than I said." I apologized, said I had to go, and I pulled away. Tall obese women have never been my type, but even if they were, starting out any relationship on an easily verified lie is a gigantic red flag. She texted me a minute or so later and told me it was fed up of me to make her get ready to go out just to leave her hanging. Her version of getting ready was putting on old unwashed pajamas. I ended up hanging out with some friends I hadn't seen in years that happened to live 20 minutes away, so it wasn't a total loss. Bullet dodged, nonetheless.
She told me she liked her nipples bitten. Until she bleeds. I'm down for a lot. But drawing blood draws the line. When the wait staff looked at me with increasing pity and concern.
Thank you for watching. We upload new videos every day, so be sure to come back for more fun. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video.